I consider myself as an ambassador of Africa.
Yes, of course.
Everywhere I go, I bring something from home and I show them something beautiful. So to
Mm.
my colleagues in another country, because they're like, why would you work for Rome and you'll be staying in Africa? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, hello, STEM2Roots. This is Mike Demba. This is where we plan on talking our way into a plan. This morning, early morning for me, I'm super excited to have a sister of mine, somebody I always wanted to have here, Yassine Idani. I will let her introduce herself. Please tell my people who you are, where you're from, what you do. Don't give them everything yet, because you know we will get there. So, Yas, tell my people who you are, please.
Okay. So hello. Like Michael said, my name is Yassine Idani, Mrs. Koné now.
Mrs. Koné.
Yes, I had the great opportunity of being in Suffolk, Dakar with Michael, and
Mhm.
I currently work as a livelihood specialist with an organization, a Catholic organization called Jesuit Refugee Service. So I basically oversee all the projects related to livelihoods in the world. I'm currently in the office, even though I work from home usually, and home is Burkina Faso for me. I'm from Burkina Faso, and also from France. So, but I really live in Burkina with my husband and all the kids.
Hmm.
And I'm currently visiting Rome. I mean, visiting the office for this month of September. So that's where you've reached me.
Yes, that's where I've reached you because you are all over. Let's go back. I just want to know what livelihood specialist is. What is that?
Okay. So, livelihood is basically any means to live.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Usually people associate it with money, but it
Hmm.
actually is money, but it goes beyond that. And in
Hmm.
our specific context, working with forcibly displaced people, as we call them, so it has refugees, it has internally displaced people, it has
Hmm.
migrants, those that migrate from one place to another due to climate,
Yeah.
due to crisis in the country. So we include all of that in that term, forcibly displaced people. So in that specific context, it's giving them hope again through
Hmm.
a means to live. Some of them arrive in a country. There were doctors where they were from, but
Yes.
because now they're migrants and because of the local laws, they cannot be a doctor anymore. How can we
Ooh.
accompany them through the legal process to get another means of living? It could be doctor again, just that they needed to take some extra courses that they wouldn't otherwise be able to because of the cost.
Hmm.
So that's what we do. In our particular settings in Africa, what we do
Yes.
a lot is entrepreneurship. In Europe and Latin America, they tend to be secondary education, tertiary education, because we know that the economies are developed enough that they can absorb many of the people with a diploma. But in our context in Africa, many countries with very high unemployment rate already, they cannot absorb any more educated people. So we train
Oh,
the youth
I
in
see.
entrepreneurship, in income generating activities. And for those with just zero education level, we train them
Yeah.
like farming, I guess climate smart agriculture, as we call it, in specific contexts where the climate shock is very impressive and affects a lot of people's lives. So that's basically what we do.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. I'm fascinated by that already. I see the line drawn
Hmm.
there already between Africa and other places that you service and
Hmm.
you help, right? In Africa, you're looking at, and we use the Africa term for, to generalize, right? So let's clear that. So
Hmm.
you already see that in training, let's say you're dealing with Africans and you train them on the education side,
Mhm.
some will be set for
Mhm.
failure already because you can have an education and not have a job. But in other places, you go the education route because they'll be employed through a diploma or through education. That
Mhm.
already tells me something about home, something about Africa. So you guys see the potential on the agriculture side, and you train people on that side and the business side of being able to actually make a living through entrepreneurship. Is that what I'm hearing?
Um, yes, and it goes beyond that. Let me put it
Okay.
that way. I
Okay.
just explained to you what I do, but as an
Okay. Yes.
organization, it goes beyond that because not only we do the training, but we cannot just train and let people go and say you're on your own. We have
Right.
to accompany them.
Mm.
It's a process. It's
Mm.
not just the training, the know-how, it's the actually starting to do it. And we walking alongside you, making sure that you're all set before we just go hands off and
Ah.
then let you continue on your own. And we have this department also called advocacy.
Okay.
And what they
Mm.
do is now advocate with the countries for more rights for the refugees, for example, because some
Mm.
people, for example, in Malawi, refugees don't have the right to work in the country and they're all within a camp. So you have a camp of 200 and something thousand people and most of them are very young people. What do you do of that? So there's so
Mm.
many issues, and these are people that went through a lot of trauma, that
Already.
lived very difficult crisis, sometimes
Mm.
multiple crises, and they come and now you have to take them. So it's a whole package of accompaniment that we do. It's not only the livelihoods, but there's also psychosocial support. There's
Yeah.
also reconciliation. Being a Catholic organization, we work with people
Ah.
to kind of
Ah.
resolve this conflict that they have because some of them come as refugees, but they're actually from different ethnic groups
Of
that do
course.
fight back home. So sometimes they bring
Mm.
the crisis inside the camps
Internally,
with them
in a camp.
internally, and we need to work with them to kind of overcome that, to survive together and live together and find their dignity again.
And so, what are some of these crises like related to tribalism and stuff? And because wherever they're coming from, there's a crisis. They end up in the same camp, and that continues, kind of thing. Is that what it
Basically,
is?
what you watch on TV and more. It's that's where we work basically. Except in Europe, where in the countries where we have operations, it's mostly for the migrants, so Africans
Yes,
and
yes, yes,
Asians
yes,
that
yes, yes.
migrate to Europe. Yeah, that's so we work with them. But otherwise, the crisis you see in Sudan, it's
Yeah.
creating a big spur of support for Chad and for South Sudan that is welcoming a huge number of migrants to their countries. At the same time, you have what we call the forgotten crisis because it
Mm,
happened so
mm,
long,
mm.
such a long time ago, but those people just never moved because
Give me an
also they're
example
in a
of
place
that.
where
Give me an
an
example of that.
example would be in Chad, the crisis, the Sudanese crisis back in
Yes,
2000 when we were
yes.
still in college, and those people are still living there in Chad. They haven't returned, even though there's sort of
From Sudan.
from Sudan, from what is now called South Sudan.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Let's say that right.
because
Yeah.
then it was the
Mm.
war to divide the two
So it
countries.
was. Yes.
And then
Yes.
they moved, they ran away from that, and they are in eastern Chad mostly. And yeah, so you have that. Another example would be Central Africa Republic. Many of the refugees are in
Yeah.
Cameroon, and
Oh,
because because of the not ECOWAS, I forgot the CEMAC, the equivalent of ECOWAS for Central
for
Africa.
Central
They're
Africa.
allowed to
Yep.
work in Cameroon, and they see it as a better opportunity for them than their own country, so they don't go back. but yet they haven't found the means yet to be on their own and survive. So we come in and
Whoa.
we help them find their way, and eventually they go back even with the knowledge they have.
Yes, thanks for opening our eyes to something we've not discussed enough. And I want to, and this is why, like, we are taking a pause there to talk about these things, because this is so important to know about Africa. And it leads me to want to ask. We're talking about Africa, a continent where, what what Africa is perceived to be, because everywhere I go, everything I hear about Africa, especially here in the West, is every example of poverty they want to give, they mention
Hmm.
Africa as a continent. And from country to country, there's a variance there. But if Africa is hosting African refugees,
Hmm.
talk to me about that dynamic of, the countries in Africa that are able, even though labeled poor, to have these large camps of refugees and take care of them. Are they being taken care of humanely? Is this the poor giving to the poor? If I accept that label of Africa being poor, how do you see that dynamic of Africa hosting her own, refugees and taking care of others that are maybe in crisis?
Okay, well, I think this is a great question. I usually don't like that label of
Mm-hmm.
Africa
Mm-hmm.
being poor,
Mm-hmm.
even though that's
Mm-hmm.
all is being shown everywhere, because it has its very rich parts as well.
Yes.
Oftentimes, when you go to these countries that host so many refugees, and now I'm talking about refugees because remember, there are internally displaced people too. For example, the crisis in Burkina, we don't have many refugees from
You don't have
elsewhere.
camps.
It's
Yeah.
mostly people moving within Burkina, going from one place to another that they feel safer, but still within the same border. So, in the case of refugee camps, the largest one that we have is in Kenya, in
Mm.
northern Kenya, in a place called Kakuma, and it's
Okay.
also one of the oldest camp. I think it's been there for like 30 years. Yeah, and it's still there. And it's basically people, a little bit of people from Rwanda, but mostly
Wow.
from Somali or Somalia
Yeah.
and Ethiopia. So right now with the recent crisis in Ethiopia, many of the people also moved there to that camp. So you have that one.
Mm.
You have quite a big one also in Malawi, the Zaleka camp, and
Okay.
also in Uganda. And these are the camps where we work in. So depending on, regardless of these camps, there may be other camps in the country, but we don't
Hmm.
work there. These are the big ones that I know of. Um, some countries are more open to refugees than others. Gave you the example of Chad.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
laws are more friendly to
Really?
outsiders than other countries, like in Malawi, where
Where
it's more.
they keep them in a camp and they don't have work permit. The work permit. They don't work.
They just don't have work permits, but yeah, they basically live there. Depending on where you go, this
Yes.
is what you will see in terms of camp. But before you get to those camps, you
Right.
have beautiful cities too, just like
Of course.
everywhere else.
Of course.
you know, those that that are not shown on TV. We
Yes.
have
Yes.
beautiful places. Um, I was recently in Cote d'Ivoire, and I
Yes.
don't think Abidjan envies anything
Yeah.
to a European city right
Yeah.
now.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
they did a good job in terms of developing. At what cost, I don't know, but
Right.
it is a beautiful city. Let's just put it
Yes.
that way. Yes,
Yes.
I
Yes.
truly enjoyed it. Like I know many people this vacation that just didn't bother going very far, and just went to Cote d'Ivoire, enjoyed themselves, and came back. So there's also
Amazing.
that next to
Yeah.
all the chaos that we
Mm.
see
Mm.
on
Mm.
TV.
Mm. And I'm glad you went there because having my mom around, I watch this thing where like I play like city tours, right? And I stumbled on Abidjan the other day, and it's like an hour and a half long video of just somebody touring the city. I was sitting here in Houston, fascinated by what I was seeing because I've never been to Cote d'Ivoire at all, and just seeing Africa that way, and going to last year September went to Joburg, went to South Africa, and saw a city like Johannesburg in Africa, and I see all this greatness. I'm looking at these cities, the cities that are beautiful, right? And
Mhm.
this is Africa we're talking about, and we still have not escaped this label that you and I both don't like, but it's what I hear and see everywhere, because this side of Africa does exist, and like everything else, the negative is always what gives us that soreness. It's like
Indeed.
it sits there and it's what you see first.
Mhm.
How do we, I won't even say reconcile. How do we, as Africans, here you are talking to us Africans outside representing Africa, how do we not fall for what we are told about Africa, and it becomes something that we accept? Like I've fallen victim to having a conversation with somebody about Africa, and
Mhm.
I default to, somebody that maybe is just curious to know about Africa. I
Right.
default to this side of the poverty, and this side of
Mhm.
the pain, the struggle and stuff. And by default, that's where I'm headed with the conversation, rather than educate them on something that, they have no idea, because that's not what they see. How
Yeah.
do we as Africans have the narrative of Africa our own way, the way it should be, rather than what the media just plants in our head subconsciously?
I think I consider myself as an ambassador of Africa.
Yes, of course.
Everywhere I go, I bring something from home and I show them something beautiful. So to
Mm.
my colleagues in another country, because they're like, why would you work for Rome and you be staying in Africa? It doesn't make any sense.
I was about
And
to,
I just
I'll come
show
there
them.
because I'll ask you.
No, no, but I'm like, there's no place like Africa. My kids almost went crazy here during COVID, and they just having a great time in Africa because they have all the space, all the friends. There's still humanity there.
Oh,
So, like I said, we're ambassadors. When I travel anywhere in the world, I have pictures of places in Burkina and everything that I show people, or fabrics from home that are
yeah,
handmade that I bring to my
yeah,
colleagues. And they're also
yeah,
proud now to show it to their friends and
yeah,
be like, oh, it is from this country in Africa. And I'm
yeah.
like, yes, it's not just about war and poverty and people trying to move here. It's
Mhm.
also about that beauty that is
Yes,
there.
yes. Let's go there so that we won't forget. So you, Yassine, you have access to the whole world. So I know you, and that's why I'm saying this, right? And access to the world to me means what? Mostly the world, the rest of it, especially the Western world, will accept somebody smart, educated, somebody that can bring and something to their economy, somebody who can contribute. How do we contribute to somebody's economy? By showing them our expertise, our resume, some call it CV, our degrees, our knowledge, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Like we all know, an example is Canada. Canada
Hmm.
looks for that immigrant that is coming in with at least a bachelor's. Why? It's
Hmm.
because they're bringing in people that will contribute to their economies. So that's why I
Right.
know right now, if you chose, you can live in France, work there, and might move the entire family there. You can choose
Hmm.
the US. You studied here. You can do that today, and just plan it before the end of the year. You're here. You can do that for Canada. You can do that for many countries in Europe. But Yassine is in Burkina, based there, going to Rome and back, France and back, and you're in Africa. Tell us why. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
It's not that I haven't tried.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
As
Uh
you know,
huh.
I was in the US, and that's where
You
I
were?
studied.
Yeah.
I got my
Yes.
diploma, and then I
Yes.
decided at one point to go back. At that point, I should maybe say that it was a bit a forced choice because when
Okay.
I
Yes.
graduated, it was in 2008. There was
Yeah.
an economical fall at that time
Yes.
in the United
Yes.
States, and people were
Yes.
more firing than hiring. So it
Yes.
wasn't a good time to graduate and get
Yes.
a job right away. And as you
Yes.
know, as international students, we only have 1 year
Mhm.
of work permit. After
Yes.
that, you either change your status or you get
Mhm.
out of the country if you
Right.
don't want to be
Right.
illegal.
Right.
So I decided to go back home, and almost immediately, like within 2 months, I got a job. I was like, oh, okay, and a good paying job too for a first
Okay.
job.
Okay.
So in a way, it was a blessing.
Yes.
Going back was a blessing. So I ended up spending my time there, and then I got a job with working for the United States Peace Corps, that is closely linked to the U.S. Embassy. So again, and it's through that job that I really discovered my country, because
Mm.
I did not even know which way, which exit of the city of Ouagadougou I should take to go to this place and that place. And this job really opened my eyes because we were placing volunteers, so privileged American people, into our villages. I mean, very rural places, and they would live there for 2 years. And I'm like, if they
Yes.
can do it, and I don't even know which way to go to set my foot there. That's There's something wrong. So I really loved that job, and the job that made me realize that it's not only about the city, because I was a city girl. I had no idea what was going on um, outside of my city. Learning that the poverty, yet the dignity and happiness that people had, it's it did strike me, because I was in this privileged country in America. I had a
Yes.
diploma. I was miserable
Yes.
because I couldn't find a job. And now I'm
Yes.
here. I have a job. I'm happy. And I see these people in rural places that we
Yes.
call poor people, but
Oh.
that are so wealthy in terms of happiness and
Yes.
humanity.
Yes.
So I
The essential
decided this
things
is
of life. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
development, that's how I found
Yes.
myself. I have a master in accounting, but I ended up in development. And I enjoyed it.
Whoa.
To this point, I enjoy it. Helping
Whoa.
people find their way in life, training people, building their capacity instead of just giving them something material, is what passionates me more. So when I came again in Italy in
Yes.
2019, at that time I didn't have a job actually. Because the Peace Corps had closed in Burkina.
Oh.
So I lost my job. They closed because of security reasons. So
Okay.
my husband got a job in Rome, so I followed because I had nothing. There was no job holding me back. So
Yes.
when I came here, I applied. I saw this position. I was like, "This is great. I want this." So I applied for it, and I got the job. But we were living here. But it was right before I started in February 2020, and in March 2020 we were on lockdown because of COVID.
Yes.
Originally, we thought it would be 2 weeks
Yeah.
maximum, and then it
Yeah.
turned out to be like 5 months.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
in Italy here, it was quite harsh. It
It
was like
was.
a
It
military
was.
camp.
It was. It was. It was.
So the kids
Mm.
spent like 4 months. They didn't even step out. They were just on the balcony or inside the small apartment. And that was harsh on
Tough.
them.
Tough.
So the first opportunity I got to go back, I went back with them, and my husband followed. And we realized that we were happier there. And I just told my organization here, I'm like, listen, this is a job that I can do remotely. I mean, I was doing it from my apartment. I don't see
Yes.
why I cannot do it
Same
from
thing.
Burkina.
Yeah.
And besides, at that time, I was covering countries in Eastern Africa and Southern Africa.
Okay.
So I could easily travel from Burkina to those countries. So I decided to go back, and my
Yes.
husband eventually also came back and was working from home. So we all have this room in our house that we call our office that is like
Yes.
few meters from the bedroom, and that's where we work from most of the time. And it's been great. I don't regret it. When I see the kids, the way they're growing, the way they're thriving,
Yes.
I think there's no place like home, really.
I, I,
And I'm
I
enjoying
accept
it.
your point there. I accept your point there where you said it's not like you didn't try. So some of it is accidental. So COVID, you were already in Rome. COVID came. There was this experiment of working from home successfully, and working from home can be done in Africa. You do
Hmm.
that. You look at your kids. You see they're thriving. You see that they're happier, and
Hmm.
you have the privilege of being able to go back to the office like right now and back to Burkina and see that as a family that's better. There's so much there because that won't fit for everybody. Like it's not that everybody will be lucky to have that. But something that I've picked up from what you just said is these important things in life that you can't just you know you've been a fan of StemToRoots, so we've had a million conversations right now about why those of us that have not gone home, and you've
Hmm.
already listed some of these things that were mentioned, right? Yes. I have somebody here like Anna who mentioned, how the US is giving her everything, but her
Hmm.
happiness is at home. What I mean by everything is what we work for, that money and all that stuff. And she is earning it, she's earning it good. But she goes home, whether it's an extended holiday, she knows her peace of mind is at home. And now you're thinking about how to trade that. This money that I work for, these conveniences of infrastructure and all these cool things,
Hmm.
versus the place where I have my happiness.
Right.
This is difficult for a lot of people, you know, in your
Hmm.
world, and you've seen it now. What can you say about that can help somebody decide? It's an individual decision, right? Between what makes you
Hmm.
happy and feel peace versus, this thing that is forced on us, the economy, the money,
Right.
being able to do that. Like, Yass, talk to us over here. How can I move my family to Africa and be happy?
Just
Give
move.
me,
I mean, you have
give
to
me,
make the
give me
decision first of
therapy.
all. But I think what Anna said is right
Mhm.
because uh, my, I would say the plus that I have here is
Yes.
that I'm still considered a staff of the office here in Rome. So I
Right.
get paid in euro, but
Good.
I get to spend it now in Burkina.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Um, Now, what we don't have maybe in Burkina are the big parks with all the playgrounds and all in Burkina, like we would have here. Other than that, I don't, and maybe the diversity of
Mm.
access to food and things like that.
Yes.
Like the fruits here that, and I love fruits that I
Yes.
cannot
Yes.
find at home.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, there are fruits at home that I cannot find here.
Find. Yes. Yep.
So it's it's a balance. You cannot have it all in one
I
single
see.
place.
Oh, you
It
cannot have
has
it
its
all.
pluses
Mm. Mm.
and minuses,
Mm.
uh, but it's a personal decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, we
Mm-hmm.
need to sit down
Mm-hmm.
and weigh the pluses and the minuses,
Yes.
and then decide what is good for you and your family. In the end of the day, I think that is it. I think what was also key for my husband and I in
Yes.
deciding that was that we wanted to give that African education to our children,
Oh, African
knowing that they
education.
still get that chance to go abroad when they are bigger. When they
Mm.
finish high school, they can still go. They can go to Europe, they can go to America, wherever the wind blows them and wherever they want to go. Then it will
Mm-hmm.
be their turn to make that decision for themselves. But at
Ah,
least we would have given them all the foundation to help them make that decision.
I like the word foundation.
Yeah.
Yes,
And we
like
also want
listen.
them to love Africa and not just go and stay elsewhere,
Oh,
but
I see.
think about doing something from home because no one else is going to come and develop our continent for us. Beside this work that I'm doing, I'm also very much involved in entrepreneurship
I
because,
can't wait to go
well,
there.
I train and accompany people in entrepreneurship. If I don't do it myself, how can I accompany people?
I can't
So I
wait to go
started
there.
things. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so these are my also my little contributions to
Hmm.
the development of my country and to some extent to the continent
Yes, look, halfway already. You know,
already.
from intro, everything that I thought about going into, I just put it aside just from your introduction, and we're already halfway through. This is where I take a pause and ask you to tell me something I don't know. That's what we do over
Oh,
here at
that
STEM to Roots.
question.
Yes, tell me something you think I don't know.
Well, I guess that would be the next steps.
Ah,
I'm involved in entrepreneurship. You may not know that, but I know some friends of ours do know that. I currently have a business with my husband. It's a fish selling business. So we get it actually we started it like right when we met in 2015 and it's still been
okay.
going on. Yeah, some of our friends are even customers. So it's we have two shops in Waga. And it's basically fish and now we diversify to seafood, poultry, meat in general, and also some how do you call that, some spices and ingredients, mostly from
What?
Cote d'Ivoire, because we
Ah.
have a big diaspora of Burkinabe, but that were born and that grew up in Cote d'Ivoire. But we have them in Burkina, and sometimes they crave for this type of food and they cannot find it anywhere. So we decided
Oh.
to start this business, and the growth has been steady now. We went through a period of big growth and now it's kind of steady, but it's going
You
well
know,
despite the crisis in Burkina and all. It's going.
let me tell you first thing. So, the for me, my diversification of Africa, like just knowing slightly more than my cocoon, was
Hmm.
being lucky to go to school in Suffolk, Dakar. When all
Hmm.
of us met there, in the early 2000s, 2000, 2001, 2002,
Hmm.
meeting Burkina Base for the first time because no
Hmm.
Burkina Base is going to Gambia. So I didn't see Burkina Faso in Gambia. So meeting in Dakar, what I started knowing about, because coming from like a coastal country, right? Coming from the Gambia where we have the Atlantic coast, and my only neighbor being Senegal, and
Uh-huh.
they have the Atlantic coast. I thought everywhere in the world had seafood, right?
Yeah.
And then when I met people from Burkina, and seafood is almost a delicacy. It's like yeah, it's like seafood is the poor people food at home. Like,
Ah,
because
oh
seafood
wow.
is the poor people home, because you can go and have, there's this fish called bonga. It's
Okay.
very, like, growing up, it was very cheap fish. That's what everybody eats, and it's there in the ocean in abundance, right?
Hmm.
And there's these women that farm like oysters and on crab and shrimp, and all of that stuff was just in abundance everywhere. You can't
Wow.
touch meat because that is expensive. And then I met Burkinabes who eat meat like that.
Because that's all we have.
I'm like, oh, so looking at Burkina Faso, landlocked, up there you have Mali and Niger,
Hmm.
and down you have Cote d'Ivoire and
Hmm.
Ghana, Togo, and Benin, all surrounding Burkina Faso. Like,
Hmm.
I'm already shifting. I'm fascinated by, because every border country has seeps into the next country.
Right.
So that mix of, like you said about from Cote d'Ivoire, like craving food from home and stuff, and you're supplying fish and seafood, and
Hmm.
where are you sourcing that?
Exactly from some of the places you mentioned.
Like
Cote
Ghana?
d'Ivoire. No, Cote d'Ivoire
Okay,
mostly,
yeah, yeah.
because my husband's family is there, so they
Okay.
help with the supply. But also from Senegal.
Oh,
We did open a link there, and we get it from Senegal by truck, a refrigerated truck to
really?
Burkina as well. Yes. So that's one of the businesses. I mean, that's the oldest business that I have with my husband, and the second one is